Welcome to The Explainer. Every single organization out there, whether it's huge or just starting out, wrestles with this one central challenge. How do you take a brilliant idea and turn it into something real, something that actually delivers value? It sounds so simple, right? But man, it's one of the hardest things to get right.
So yeah, how do you do it? How do you connect that lightning-in-a-bottle moment of genius to the day-in, day-out work that actually builds a product, makes a customer happy, and at the end of the day, grows the business? That is the billion-dollar question we're going to unpack today.
It almost always feels like you're dealing with two completely different worlds. In one world, you've got the strategists and the leaders. They're all about defining the why, that big, grand vision. And then way over in the other world, you've got the teams on the ground, totally buried in the how. They're writing code, they're designing interfaces, they're managing tasks. And that massive gap between them, that's exactly where good ideas go to die and value gets lost.
Okay, so let's get into it. To even begin to figure out how to bridge that gap, we first need some kind of map of all the tools and platforms that are supposed to help. And lucky for us, our source material gives us a really great one. So here it is, the map from our source. It looks simple, but it's actually super powerful. It's a classic 2x2 matrix. So, going from left to right, it sorts tools based on whether they focus on high-level strategy or the nitty-gritty of execution. And then, going up and down, it measures what's arguably the most important thing. How much do they connect all that work to real, tangible business value? Let's break down what's living in each of these four quadrants.
All right, up on the top left, we have what are called strategic planning tools. Think of these as the 30,000-foot view. They're all about defining that big picture and planning these massive business transformations. The only problem? They're often completely disconnected from the actual work that's supposed to create all that value.
Now, let's slide down to the bottom right. Here you'll find the tools that, let's be honest, most of us use every single day, the traditional work management platforms. They are fantastic for tracking tasks, for running agile sprints, for managing the how. But, and this is a big but, they usually operate in a bubble with no clear, constant link back to the why.
Now we're getting somewhere. Moving up the value chain, we get to the value-aware execution tools. This is a big step up. These platforms still manage all the day-to-day work, but they start to build that bridge we've been talking about by linking tasks and projects back to the business value they're meant to create. It's an evolution. And that brings us to the holy grail up in the top right, strategic value platforms. According to our source, this is the real sweet spot. These platforms, well, they try to do it all. They want to connect that high-level strategy directly to execution. And they do it with a relentless focus on defining, tracking, and measuring business value from the very start to the very end.
So we've got our map of the landscape, but what does it actually feel like to work in that top right quadrant, in that sweet spot? Well, our source uses the IBM Garage Experience as a key example, so let's zoom in and see how its value-driven approach really works.
The analysis really zeroes in on three core ideas that make it different. First, it's purpose-built for their specific innovation method. Second, it's fundamentally value-driven, not task-driven, which is a huge shift. And third, it looks at opportunities from all sorts of different angles, not just, did we get it done?
And you can see that value-driven idea in action right from the get-go. Instead of kicking things off with a giant to-do list, the whole process starts by defining the problem. Look at this. It maps everything from what's bugging the customer to what competitors are doing, all to create a super clear value proposition before a single task ever gets assigned.
So once that why is crystal clear, the platform then translates it directly into the how. That big strategic opportunity gets broken down into the stuff teams can actually work on. Releases, epics, user stories. You can literally see the thread connecting every single piece of work all the way back to that original goal. There's no guessing.
And here's the magic. This is where it all comes full circle. The feedback loop. This isn't just a dashboard for tracking if people are busy. No, this is for tracking outcomes. It's measuring the actual business value being delivered, from profit to projected value. And it closes that loop between the work that got done and the strategic goals you were trying to hit in the first place.
Now, of course, IBM isn't alone here. This space is super crowded, it's super competitive, so how does this value-driven idea really stack up against the other big players in the market? Let's just neutrally lay out the competitive landscape that our source material describes.
Okay, first up, ServiceNow SPM. Now, these guys are an absolute powerhouse for centralized planning and IT governance. According to our source, the key difference is all about when you define value. ServiceNow is really strong on what you'd call back-end governance, managing work that's already in the pipeline. The IBM approach, though, is all about front-end value framing, defining that why before the work even begins. The analysis also suggests it's a simpler setup and uses AI to help orchestrate the whole process.
Next, we've got Shibumi. They are excellent at creating those beautiful executive-level dashboards that track ROI after a project is done. The analysis here contrasts that by pointing to IBM's focus on agile teams, not just these high-level strategic programs. And again, it's about using AI to map out the value beforehand and then building the tracking right into the team's daily workflow. Then you have SAP Linkage. The big difference our source highlights here is really a shift in focus from IT to the business itself. So while Linkage is fantastic at managing these super complex IT landscapes and application portfolios, the IBM approach is positioned as being designed for cross-functional business teams. It's about focusing on business outcomes first with what's described as a more lightweight, streamlined implementation. And finally, there's PlanView Agile Place, a real leader in visual work management tools like Kanban. The source presents a super clear contrast here. PlanView is amazing at optimizing the execution of the work. The IBM tool, on the other hand, is positioned as focusing more on what's called upstream value discovery, basically using AI to help you figure out the right things to build in the first place.
All right, so after looking at the map and all the different players, what's the big takeaway here? What does all this tell us about where business and strategy and technology are all heading?
Well, this entire landscape, it points to a really clear and powerful trend. The goalposts are moving. It's just not good enough anymore to get better at managing tasks. The new goal is to get smarter at orchestrating value, all the way from that first spark of an idea to the final impact it makes.
And honestly, this quote from the analysis just says it all, doesn't it? The most advanced tools, the best methodologies, they're all pushing us to focus relentlessly on the why. Because at the end of the day, if you don't get the why right, it really doesn't matter how perfectly you manage the workflow.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. As AI gets better and better at mapping opportunities, at calculating value, and orchestrating all the work, what does that mean for us? What's the new, uniquely human role for our creativity and our intuition in a world that's so driven by value? Definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for watching.